With SRN News, I'm Keith Peters in Washington. The full Senate confirms CIA Director Mike Pompeo to be the new Secretary of State.
The tally was much as expected.
The yeas are 57. The nays are 42. The nomination is confirmed.
The outcome was solidified after Republican Rand Paul announced earlier this week that he had reversed his position and would support the nominee. Still, Pompeo's nomination faced historic opposition from most of the Senate Democrats, sparking an unusually partisan confirmation fight for a Secretary of State. They cited in part his foreign policy viewpoints, but Republicans touted his qualifications, including his recent talks with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Linda Kenyon, Washington.
Pompeo has been sworn in and is en route as Secretary of State to a meeting in Brussels. Additional accusers may have been the difference in Bill Cosby's second sex assault trial.
In the Cosby trial that ended in a hung jury last year, prosecutors were able to present only one accuser in addition to Andrea Constand, the former Temple University employee who the entertainer violated 14 years ago. This time, there were 5. And former federal prosecutor David Weinstein says that was the difference.
It presented a difficult case for the defense to overcome, and one that this jury was able to quickly come to a conclusion about the truth of the witness who did testify.
Weinstein says the Me Too movement, though not part of this case, has to have played a role in the jurors' thinking. I'm Warren Levinson.
An explosion rocked a refinery in northwestern Wisconsin, injuring at least 11 people, forcing the evacuation of homes, schools, and a hospital, and sending a plume of noxious smoke billowing into the air. Authorities said a tank of crude oil or asphalt exploded about 10 a.m. at the Husky Energy oil refinery in Superior, a city that shares a Lake Superior shipping port with nearby Duluth, Minnesota. That prompted them to order the evacuation of a 3-mile radius around the refinery, as well as a 10-mile corridor south of it where the smoke was heading. This is SRN News. One of America's biggest school districts declares gender irrelevant.
Officials in Fairfax County, Virginia, a suburb of Washington, D.C., have decided to begin teaching students that their gender was assigned by a doctor at birth and can be changed if a student wishes to do so. Robert Rigby Jr., president of FCPS Pride, tells the Fairfax County Times, quote, "The term we used to use, biological sex, is broader and less well-defined than what we used to think." Michael Harrington, SRN News.
Jewish groups say Britain's main opposition Labour Party is still failing to tackle anti-Semitism despite a promise by leader Jeremy Corbyn to stamp out anti-Jewish prejudice. Corbyn says a meeting with the Board of Deputies of British Jews and the Jewish Leadership Council this week was positive and constructive. Board of Deputies President Jonathan Arkush says the meeting was a missed opportunity because there were no actions to go with the words. Allegations of Labour anti-Semitism have grown. This is SRN News. CDC researchers think increased recognition of autism among minority children may explain why numbers are on the rise.
A report for the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention found that 1 in 59 U.S. children were identified as having autism in 2014. That's up from 1 in 68 children in 2010 and 2012. CDC researchers say that increased recognition and diagnosis in minority children is likely the big reason for the overall increase. White children are diagnosed with autism more often than Black or Hispanic children, but the gap is closing. The CDC's Deborah Christensen, one of the study's co-authors, said we need to do more work to make sure that children with developmental concerns are evaluated quickly so that they can get the therapy and services they need. Jennifer King, Washington.
Officials say a Minnesota woman suspected of killing her husband at their home and then killing a Florida woman and stealing her identity is headed from Texas to Florida to face prosecution. 56-year-old Lois Rice was picked up at a Texas jail this morning. More details at srnnews.com. I'm Keith Peters in Washington.
This is Boomer Esiason with the CBS Sports Minute, brought to you by Barbasol. Here's a no-brainer. Barbasol is making razors. Try the new Barbasol Ultra 6 today. Round 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs gets underway tonight, and 2 marquee franchises, Washington and Pittsburgh, will answer the bell. Goalie Braden Holtby has finally returned to rescue the Capitals from a 2-0 deficit against Columbus. However, I doubt there's a netminder left in the playoffs who could stop the 2-time defending champion Penguins, with Captain Sidney Crosby playing the best hockey of his career. That's right, you heard it here, folks. Pittsburgh in 6. Phoenix. Out west, frankly, I didn't think either San Jose or Vegas would reach this round, but Evander Kane has been a late-season godsend to the Sharks. But Knights goalie Marc-Andre Fleury, who won 3 cups with the Pens, has an awesome defense in front of him and a whole bunch of players that play 200-foot hockey. I'll take Vegas in a fast and physical 6-game series. I'm Boomer Esiason.
From Keene in the Shire, the Liberty Media capital of the world, this is Daryl W. Perry, host of FPP Radio News for Thursday, April 26th, 2018. Silver is trading at $16.55 per ounce. Gold is valued at $1,323 per ounce. Zen Cash is trading at $38, and the average price of Bitcoin is $8,906. Antiwar.com reports while he struggles with an increasingly hostile mainstream media, President Trump and the rest of the administration have been facilitating an upcoming summit with North Korea by dialing back hostility in both rhetoric and actions. This is setting a decidedly different tone. The ongoing spring U.S. war games in South Korea are substantially less aggressive than in previous years. They also got a late start because of the Winter Olympics, and instead of extending the games later to compensate, they're making them shorter. President Trump is also a lot more complimentary of North Korea's leader, Kim Jong-un, than last year. On Tuesday, Trump said Kim had been very honorable and open in talks with the U.S. on the summit planning. Mainstream Western media outlets, however, have been very publicly soured on the talks. As the U.S., North Korea, and South Korea all make confidence-building moves, reporters are scrambling to find anyone they can who predicts failure. They have further heavily focused on past diplomatic failures in an attempt to shape the expectations of summits to come. Beyond that, President Trump has been criticized for making concessions to North Korea ahead of the talks. Trump has pointed out that he's not actually conceded anything to North Korea yet. Much of the media is viewing Trump's willingness to talk with North Korea at all as a concession. This is unsurprising since previous administrations have refused to talk on the grounds that North Korea does not deserve to talk to them. With North Korea making so many overtures, however, Trump appeared to feel he could not just ignore such offerings any longer. Born into a devastating world and raised among the crowd, the Cloudwalker assumes a new identity and begins the unrelenting quest for truth. In this epic journey, he discovers dark secrets about aspects of his previous life that he once trusted. Through the journal of the Cloudwalker, he shares both the traumatic hardships and the eternal beauties of his experiences. Fueled in the beginning by his unsettling thoughts and emotions, he learns how to find peace with everything he has woken up to. Dear Society by the Cloudwalker is available from Amazon.com and all major bookstores. UPI reports Michael Cohen, President Donald Trump's personal lawyer, plans to assert his Fifth Amendment rights in a federal case involving adult film star Stormy Daniels, according to court documents filed on Wednesday. Cohen said he would not self-incriminate in the California-based court because he is under active investigation by the FBI in a separate case in New York. Investigators raided Cohen's home, office, and hotel on April 9th and seized documents and communications. Prosecutors say Cohen was being investigated for criminal conduct that largely centers on his personal business dealings. In March, Daniels filed a lawsuit against Trump and Cohen in U.S. District Court in California. The original suit sought to nullify a hush agreement over an alleged affair between the actor and the president. She said the agreement was void because Trump never signed it. An amendment in the suit accused Cohen of defamation for denying her allegation of the affair with Trump before his presidency. For over 40 years, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has been a trusted source for buying and selling precious metals like gold and silver. And as a Bitcoin-preferred business, Roberts & Roberts Brokerage has removed the minimum purchase amount for all orders paid in the digital currency. Call Roberts & Roberts Brokerage today for knowledgeable advice on buying and selling precious metals and a forward-thinking approach to new technologies. 800-874-9760 or visit online at rrbi.co. Reuters reports an elderly former policeman has been arrested and charged with 8 murders attributed to the Golden State Killer, a serial criminal responsible for dozens of rapes and slayings that terrorized parts of California during the 1970s and 80s, according to authorities on Wednesday. The suspect was identified at a Sacramento news conference as Joseph James D'Angelo, age 72, in a case officials said was finally solved by DNA evidence about 2 months after gaining renewed attention in the best-selling book, I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Sacramento County Sheriff Scott Scott Jones credited the book with helping to generate new tips, but said no information was extricated from the book that led directly to the apprehension. The FBI has previously said that the man sought in the 40-year-old case was tied to 12 slayings, 45 rapes, and more than 120 burglaries in and around Sacramento, the eastern San Francisco Bay Area, and Southern California. The crime spree spanned 10 California counties when a wave of violent home invasions shattered a time of innocence in which area residents routinely left doors unlocked. The suspect, also dubbed by investigators as the East Area Rapist and the original Night Stalker, is considered one of the state's most prolific serial killers. This has been FPP Radio News. Online at fppradio.com.
This is Tiki Barber with a CBS Sports Minute. There's never consensus when it comes to the NFL draft. 32 war rooms hold their cards close to the vest, while we on the outside can only speculate and opine. So with a few hours before the Cleveland Browns are officially on the clock, here's my take on the top 5. The best defensive player in the draft is NC State defensive end Bradley Chubb, an athletic freak who will have an immediate impact. The same can be said for former Nittany Lion Saquon Barkley, this draft's best offensive player. I think that they should go number 1 and 2 to the Browns and Giants respectively. The best quarterback is the one who produced collegiately most effectively and dramatically, Baker Mayfield. The Jets would be foolish to pass on a player who won't continue their trend of hopeless projects. The Browns are QB needy and should take Sam Darnold with their second pick, and to finish the signal caller run, the Broncos select Josh Rosen. Now, I may be wrong, but that's okay. It's just the way of the draft. I'm Tiki Barber.
CBS Sports Radio.
Bill Cosby still free on bail. I'm Jackie Quinn with an AP News Minute. The 80-year-old comedian was allowed to leave court today after his conviction, but could be sentenced to up to 30 years in prison. Oscar Wells Gabriel reports on the verdict.
He was known as America's Dad, and now Bill Cosby is known as a convicted sexual predator. The 80-year-old comedian has been found guilty of 3 charges of drugging and molesting a woman at his home in 2004.
Ronnie Jackson remains the White House doctor, but withdrew his nomination as VA Secretary. President Trump on the allegations of misconduct.
He's a great man, and he got treated very, very unfairly.
Despite the heat, Arizona teachers marched 2 miles to the state capitol today. They've walked off the job fighting for better pay and more school funding. Atlanta leaders want an investigation into former Mayor Kasim Reed's administration giving out bonuses worth about $500,000 in his final days in office. I'm Jackie Quinn.
This is Jim Rome with the CBS Sports Minute. You know it's a crazy night of sports when a Stanley Cup playoff Game 7 gets lost in the shuffle, because that doesn't happen, especially when you've got Boston and Toronto playing, a couple of original 6 franchises, 2 diehard fan bases, 2 of the blue bloods of the sport dropping the puck and playing win or go home in a series, knotted up at 3 games apiece. And if you're wondering if a game like that can live up to the hype, I'll give you the answer. Absolutely. 11 goals. 5 lead changes. Toronto jumping out early, Boston responding. The Bruins taking the lead and the Leafs fighting back. And then the Bruins coming out and dropping a 4 spot on them in the final frame. 1 round done, a Game 7 in the books. Round 2 starting Caps Pens, Vegas San Jose. Can't wait. I'm Jim Rome.
CBS Sports Radio.
From CBC News, The World This Hour, I'm Tom Harrington.
Mr. Cosby, you prepared to go to prison, sir?
Bill Cosby built a career on snappy one-liners and funny stories. But today, outside a Pennsylvania courtroom, the famous comedian was silent in the face of gathered reporters. Moments earlier, a jury found Cosby guilty on 3 counts of sexual assault. For the women who testified in the case, and many others, the verdict was a moment for celebration. It also marked the spectacular downfall of the man once known as America's Dad. Stephen D'Souza has the details.
I feel like I'm dreaming.
Actress Lily Bernard could hardly contain her emotions after hearing Bill Cosby was guilty of 3 counts of aggravated indecent assault.
I feel like my faith in humanity is restored.
Bernard was one of more than 60 Cosby accusers, but it was only Canadian Andrea Constand's charge that Cosby sexually assaulted her in 2004 that went to trial. The jury deliberated for about a day and a half, choosing to believe Constand and 5 other women who said that Cosby drugged and assaulted them. Gloria Allred represents dozens of the accusers.
Bill Cosby
3 words for you. Guilty, guilty, guilty!
Cosby is the first high-profile figure to be convicted of sexual assault during the Me Too era, and each count brings a maximum 10 years in prison. The comedian was released on bail, and his lawyers say they will appeal. Stephen D'Souza, CBC News, New York.
The Alberta government will intervene in the latest court action by the BC government against the Trans Mountain Pipeline project. BC has announced it is asking the Court of Appeal for permission to legislate the flow of heavy oil into its province. Premier Rachel Notley says Alberta expected the move, but she doesn't think BC will win.
Honest to goodness, if BC were found to have the authority to implement the kind of regulation that they are talking about implementing, free trade in this country would grind to a halt. Resulting consequences would be very, very damaging to our national economy.
Whatever the outcome, the court is unlikely to reach a decision by May 31st. That is the deadline Kinder Morgan has imposed to get all approvals in place. Former Ontario PC leader Patrick Brown broke the legislature's ethics laws. The province's Integrity Commissioner says Brown failed to disclose rental income from his personal residence. The investigation also found that he didn't report a loan from a would-be PC candidate. Integrity Commissioner J. David Wake recommended the legislature reprimand Brown. He tweeted acceptance of that reprimand and apologized for his conduct. 18 months of investigation failed to solve the mystery of what caused the small plane crash that killed former Alberta Premier Jim Prentice and 3 others. But the Transportation Safety Board says it did come up with a likely scenario and a strong recommendation for Transport Canada. Carolyn Dunn reports.
All we have is a hypothesis.
Without a distress call, cockpit or flight data recording, the chair of the Transportation Safety Board, Kathy Fox, announced this frustrating finding.
After countless hours of analysis from experts poring over wreckage, radar data, and company and personnel records, we aren't much closer to knowing with certainty what caused this accident.
Anecdotally, investigators believe pilot Jim Kruk may have experienced spatial disorientation, which can make a pilot feel like left is right and up is down. The TSB is renewing calls for mandatory flight recording systems in all commercial and private business planes. The family of Jim Prentice released a statement saying while the TSB's report cannot restore what's been lost, it is their hope what was learned may help prevent similar accidents in the future. Carolyn Dunn, CBC News, Calgary.
Prosecutors in Britain have dropped charges against 2 Air Transat pilots. In 2016, they were accused of preparing to fly a plane while under the influence, but their blood samples were apparently destroyed at a Scottish prison by mistake. Prosecutors say there will be no further action against Imran Syed and Jean-Francois Perrault. And that is your World This Hour. For CBC News, I'm Tom Harrington.
This is John Feinstein with the CBS Sports Minute brought to you by Barbasol. Here's a no-brainer. Barbasol is making razors. Try the new Barbasol Ultra 6 today. The NFL Draft begins tonight. All I can say is halla-blanking-luya. No more going on the internet to see one more headline about today's mock draft rumor. No more endless debates about which quarterback will be chosen first or second or 12th. Once Saturday blessedly comes and goes, all the draft geeks, so-called experts will, for the most part, climb back under their rocks for a few months. Look, I get it that lots of people actually pay attention to this stuff. I get it that the NFL has somehow convinced the country that the draft is a huge deal. No one markets like the NFL. But it's really just a bunch of guys in suits rolling dice on who can play and who can't play. The drama comes when we find out who got it right. That's not tonight. That's in September and beyond. I'm John Feinstein.
Your NBC Sports Radio update starts now.
Countdown to the NFL Draft. I'm Brian Weber. First round of the NFL Draft tonight in Arlington, Texas, starting about an hour from now at 8 Eastern. How long will UCLA quarterback Josh Rosen have to wait to hear his name called? Rosen reflected on some of the criticism he's received in the draft process.
It is what it is. I mean, I'm going to go out every Sunday and play to the best of my ability. I'm going to analyze the film the week to come, look at the next opponent, try to play better the next Sunday. I think it's only hard if you really bring it upon yourself. I mean, the last couple of years, I've been criticized a little bit, but I think that people are starting to get to know me, and I think that I should mesh with an NFL team hopefully will pick me, and hopefully the rest will become history.
On the Diamond Day Baseball, the Yankees saved the best for last in New York City against the Twins. Gary Sanchez, the hero in the bottom of the ninth.
The pitch. Swung on. There goes deep left. It is high. It is far. It is gone. It's a game-winning walk-off 3-run home run. Gary Sanchez, the Sanchino, drills a long game-winning 3-run home run in the bottom of the ninth.
John Sterling with the call. Yankees Radio Network. Yankees won 4-3. Cardinals walked off the Mets in 13-4-3. Braves beat the Reds 7-4. Diamondbacks rocked the Reds 8-2. Pirates shut out the Tigers 1-0. Top of the fourth inning, the Mariners lead the Indians 3-0. Just one game in the NBA postseason tonight. Celtics lead the Bucks 3-2, try to wrap up their first-round series with a road victory in Milwaukee at 8 Eastern on the ice. Conference semis get underway tonight. Just a few minutes, it's Game 1 between the Penguins and the Capitals in our nation's capital. Teams are meeting in the postseason for the third consecutive year. 10 Eastern, Western Conference, Sharks and the expansion Golden Knights in Vegas. Game 1 of that best-of-7 series. You can catch both the games on NBCSN. This is NBC Sports Radio.